to A Well-Designed Business. My name is LuAnn and I'm so glad you found this podcast. Together with my husband Vince and our partner Bill, we have grown our company WindowWorks from the ground up. So I know and I understand the challenges you face in running your interior design business. I also know that your talent alone isn't enough to ensure your success. So on this podcast, we talk about strategies and practical steps to help you grow your business. But make no mistake about it, we have our share of fun here too, mixed in with those aha moments that I love so much. This isn't fluff. Nobody has time for that. Whether you are a new interior designer or a seasoned designer, I am here to help you create and to manage the kind of interior design firm that you dream of. It's straight talk and it's action. Are you ready? Let's get started. Hi, welcome to A Well-Designed Business. It's Power Talk Friday. And today we are going to pick the brain of Mickie Kennedy, PR expert, press release ninja, and media relations networker. Mickie is an expert at helping small businesses increase their visibility and credibility. 22 years ago, Mickie founded E-Releases to give small businesses access to the media and to the national newswire. All right. Before we get talking with Mickie, I wanted to give a shout out to Revelwoods, our show sponsor and also a sponsor of our High Point Power Talk Friday tour on October 15th. If you are not familiar with how Revelwoods empowers you to become flooring experts so that you can sell directly to your clients and so that you can profit from your research, your specifications, your know-how, then please go take a listen to episode 329. Where you will meet John Dupre, the founder of Revelwoods, or go to revelwoods.com or join us in High Point and meet him in person. Okay? Now, I want to get to our conversation with Mickie about how using a unique angle when creating press releases can help you get the attention of the press and increase the likelihood of getting published. Hi, Mickie. Thanks so much for joining me on A Well-Designed Business today.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So, Mickie, you suggested a topic to me, increasing visibility and credibility by using press releases. And you and your company do this particularly for small businesses. And, of course, I have an audience of small businesses. So I love this topic because we do need to always be thinking about how to do both of these things, increase visibility and credibility to our potential consumer market out there. But using press releases, I have to say, I have not utilized this myself in my own businesses with any intention, right? So we always have that random local, regional publication that comes and says, oh, you're a small business. You've been here for 25 years. Can we do a story on you? But I've never even taken that opportunity and then made a press release out of it. Is this the sort of thing that you're talking about? Like, kind of explain to us how you coach and help, small businesses to do this.
Right. So what I recommend is that small businesses approach a press release as doing a PR campaign. And what we're looking for is a series of 4 to 6 press releases. It could be over a year. It could be over 6 months. What naturally fits the pace at which you want to do this. But you generally need to do 4 to 6 releases to do a proper PR campaign and see whether PR works for you or not. And, I used to think that the big success was having a well-written press release. And my first book was about writing the perfect press release. And what I've realized over time is it's not so important how well written your press release is. It shouldn't be terrible, but you really should focus on the strategy of what it is you're announcing and do more strategic press releases. And that's been an evolution that I've had over probably the last decade of where I've noticed more and more I have some clients that just get picked up almost every press release they do. And I started to examine those types of press releases, and I found similarities between several of them. I have one client that only does industry surveys, and he does 40 to 60 of them a year, almost one a week. And he covers lots of verticals within mostly technology, but he ends up serving 20 or 30 niches. And so he builds surveys for each of those niches and basically takes their temperature and pulse as to how people in that industry feel right now. It might be about a particular hot button issue, but it also might be about many other different things. And so, he's publishing the survey. He's writing a press release about it. You could just do a simple search for press release sample or press release template for a survey or study and follow that model. And, what was the most interesting thing that you found in the survey? Lead with that. And then you want to have a really great quote as to your analysis of why the survey skewed a particular way. And you might tie it into what's going on right now. So right now is a really good time because the country appears to be in flux. Some people don't know whether we're coming out of the pandemic or we're about to hunker down and go back in for something else. So, how your industry is dealing with right now and the uncertainty of right now could really get some interesting numbers and results that would produce a survey that wouldn't be very useful in 6 months to a year. But if you were to get it out there and publish the results really quickly, I could see a lot of industry publications and people who write within your industry, covering that survey and publishing those results. And you being the author of that survey, it's a great way for you to stand out as, a bona fide expert, even though you may not feel that you're one. I mean, you were the one who authored the survey and you're providing the analysis of why the results are the way that they are.
Okay, so if I break that down a little bit, based on reading your website and the conversation that we've had before the air, what I need to break out is what we're talking about is if we're an audience of interior designers, we don't want to do a survey we want to do a survey that hits the consumer. So we have to think about what are the things the consumer wants to know, because what you're telling us, the trail is, if I'm Sally Smith, this is my designer, that is my example for all things. Sally Smith has a design firm in Iowa, and she wants to get some press. She wants to get some recognition and some eyeballs on her business. And what you're suggesting is that Sally could create a survey that would come up with interesting facts that would be of interest to consumers. And then when she gets those results of that survey, she then is going to create a press release that says to all of the media outlets out there, hey, this is the survey results of XYZ people, and this is the next trend in the home industry that matters to consumers, and this is why I think it's important, and here's my 3 quotes on it. And now a media outlet says, that's a pretty cool thing that Sally Smith uncovered. I want to write an article about it.
Absolutely. It works as simply as that. Basically, you're taking the temperature of something right now that you feel would be interest to journalists, and journalists are going to find it interesting because they know that their audience is going to find these results, interesting and fascinating.
So for those of us that are familiar with HARO, help a reporter out. So I'll give you a little brief description. You can sign up for a free account at HARO, and basically 3 times a day, there is an email, morning, afternoon, and evening, and there is a list of all the reporters that are looking for, I sent one to Darla Powell recently. It was like one of the reporters was looking for something on, we want to know statistics or trends in the interior design market related to Instagram or something. Well, Darla owns Wingnut Social. She does Instagram and other marketing for interior designers. I was like, this is your wheelhouse. Go answer this reporter, right? And so the point is, what we're saying is, this is like reverse engineering that. Instead of waiting for the reporter to say, I'm looking for somebody who has interesting statistics or quotes based on this topic, we're saying, here's a cool topic, putting it out there to all the reporters and seeing which reporters agree and want to make a story out of it.
Right. Because what happens with Help a Reporter Out is, I knew people that used to have success with it quite often when very few people knew about it. Now it seems everybody knows about it,
Mm-hmm.
everyone's signed up, and the journalists are just getting so many responses to each thing. And, so many journalists don't use it anymore because it becomes a full-time job for them rather than write a story. You have to weed through, 80 to 150 responses and try to figure out, how to build my story around it. So journalists are, it takes so much time to prepare a briefing for Help a Reporter Out, to synthesize what the story is about, what you're looking for. And many times it's just better or easier for a journalist to plug in someone they do research on, like, trolling through press releases and say, this looks like a good company A. Maybe I'll reach out to them and just ask for quotes. So I find that, Help a Reporter Out is becoming less and less useful as a tool. There are still people who get hits. I had someone who just in the past 6 months got a hit through Help a Reporter Out, but they admitted they had sent 5 or 6 previous ones and had been monitoring it for many months before, they latched on to that hit. And I would posit that by you taking something that's newsworthy and producing it and being the author of it, that makes you much more likely to get not just one story, but multiple articles and stories written about you where they, discuss the results of the survey and, include the quotes that you provided.
Okay. And so that is the other thing. Like you're talking about us sending out a press release. Now, your company, your service is that we can sign up for your company. We can do the press release. We can create our survey, do the press release, and we can sign up for your company. And you're going to send it out to the dozens or hundreds of media outlets. Okay, so I just have to establish that at the beginning. We could do it on our own, just like we could do anything on our own, right? It's time or money, right?
Right.
I could individually get all the lists of the editors of all the different places, blah, 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 or I can pay you a fee and it's not expensive. We'll put it all in the show notes, a couple $100, and you can do it. So, but the thing is, where I'm getting, so I want to go back to that. You said that one of the most effective things is to come up with a 4 to 6 pitch strategy, a 4 to 6 press release strategy. So how do I look at that? If you put yourself into the place of our Sally Smith in Iowa, what is the 4 to 6 things that are noteworthy? So maybe I do a survey and I can't wrap my brain around because the thing is, I can understand surveys that my industry peers would be interested in, right? How were your sales affected by COVID? And are you still busy? And, what are the delays like and all that? But that's not going to attract my consumer to me to say, oh, Sally Smith is an interior designer I want to use because, she did an industry survey of her peers. What's the kind of survey that I might do that's consumer facing that a reporter would pick up, that then the consumer reading it goes, oh, and Sally Smith is an expert interior designer and she's right here in Iowa where I am, right?
Right. So it might be an analysis of how people are adapting to life, during COVID. There are a lot more people working from home now, working remotely. They're building, converting bedrooms into offices. They're having to share space, separate space from their other spouse who also might be working full-time or part-time at home as well. So there are a lot of design changes. There's a lot of people moving into homes that have more space that they can, better have dual offices and things like that. So you can ask questions that are about those trends, about perhaps, what's the strangest thing that's happened by having to share your workspace with a family under one roof, and get some interesting anecdotes there that you could share with consumers and which they would find interesting. So anything that you feel would an audience member of a publication would find cool or interesting, you should ask, and try to get out anecdotes and stories and things like that from the survey respondents that sort of showcase the changes that is going on across the country. It's people moving houses, people building additions, people modifying guest rooms into workspaces and things like that. And what does that look like? And what kind of design challenges are there? And those are the type of opportunities for you as a designer to come in and position the questions, the response rates, and say, while 60% said that they did not find it that challenging to dedicate some workspace, 40% of them did, and they just felt uncomfortable with Zoom meetings with camera on because of the background and things like that. And you can sort of get to aesthetic challenges that people are dealing with, and potentially then you being an expert in interior design, you become a logical choice for some people reading that article that results from it as someone that they may want to utilize.
Okay, so I'm seeing this now because I think what we're saying is I feel like this happens so often. We have to get really, really, really literal with what we take for granted in what we do. And so, because what I heard is when you started, oh, well, how did people modify their homes in order to accommodate multiple people working in school, homeschooling? And, what did you do about a Zoom background? Like, blah, blah, blah. Like, I think in that moment, I realized, oh, right, we're taking this for granted that this is common knowledge because we've been in and out of everybody's houses. We've been the ones modifying the rooms, modifying the big great rooms into multiple little spaces and redesigning kitchens and great, family rooms and guest bedrooms. And we think everybody knows it, but everybody doesn't know it, right? It's like we know it so close, right? So if you have... And now I'm getting it because now if I have a survey, if I'm Sally Smith and I have a survey and I ask the 5 or 6 really, typical questions, did you change a family room into a multiple use room? Did you have trouble, blah, blah, blah. And then I notice you put a funny question in there, right? Like you want a little kind of a quirky question because that's going to elicit some more stories. It could be, what's the craziest backdrop you used for a Zoom meeting or something, right? And then what happens is, when we put this together in a press release, if a reporter likes it and picks it up and uses it as a quote, uses our information as the basis or complements an article, and then calls us out as the expert that's done this, and then we have supplied some additional anecdotal information, in my mind, I don't know if this is true, but in my mind, if I'm doing a thing about how we used our spaces differently, then I probably want to have a really prominent blog post that has maybe like befores and afters on a space that I've done. So if somebody sees this and comes to my website, it backs up that I am an expert on doing this kind of thing, whatever it is I'm surveying about. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely.
Right. So, okay. And then when we talk about, your suggestion of a strategy of 4 to 6 to do over a year, how do we look at that? Like, so, okay, I do a survey on how people change their homes for COVID. What the next, is it the 4 to 6 relate to each other and build on each other, or it's just have 4 to 6 in the can and plan it over a year so you can, okay.
Right. It's basically taking 4 to 6 disparate things and testing and see what works. Sometimes if you get a lot of success with one, you can try to replicate it by doing something different. In the case of the survey, I have one client, I mentioned, it does 40 to 60 a year. He's just, that's all he's about. And it works for him. And I think it works for him because he serves so many micro verticals within the tech space. And so he's able to really address each audience in a particular survey, and he's getting a bump that is really relevant for each with it. So if you do really well with a survey, you might consider doing another one, or is there another segment or sub-segment that I could focus on doing another survey? But I would recommend always testing out several different strategic approaches. One that I had mentioned earlier when we were talking was being contrarian. Sometimes if the industry is just hot on a particular subject, and nobody can say anything wrong about it, you could be the person that comes out and does and says, hey, I don't agree with this. And you don't have to be irrational or crazy. There's always pros and cons with everything. And you can take something as electric cars. It seems like they're so environmentally friendly and great that you can do no wrong. But a contrarian would come in and say, hey, the mining for the minerals that make up the batteries is environmentally hazardous. The labor practices are terrible. And we haven't solved the issue of what to do with these batteries at the end of their life. And are we not just creating another environmental nightmare that way? Nobody would say that person's crazy. And I don't think you would lose your standing in the community for having that viewpoint. But there's so few people willing to say that if you are that person, every time a journalist covers that subject, they're probably likely to use you as the fall guy to point out some of the obvious cons, because a journalist wants to be objective and cover both sides, but if no one's out there saying the negative, there's nobody to plug into that space. So often the stories are really one-sided. So if there's a topic within the interior design world that everybody just seems to love and feel is great, and you're like, well, here's the cons, here's the negative side of that, and I'm the person that's willing to put my reputation out there and share that and provide these really compelling quotes as to why I disagree with the industry believing on one particular side of the subject. And so that's another approach you can use strategically. There's also looking at your industry and trying to determine if there's industry blind spots. Is there something that people don't talk about in your industry that what are the type of subjects that you talk about every time you're at a conference, but it never seems to get addressed in a way that's the industry is commenting on it. It might be an industry dirty secret that people know, but they just don't talk about. These are all kinds of things where you can say maybe these blind spots exist for a reason, and me bringing a light to it won't do anything. But what I find is many times putting a light on it makes it content that the industry is receptive to. I've had it work both ways, but that's definitely a strategic approach where you can sort of analyze your industry for a blind spot and then cover it. I had a client who he said that the most frustrating thing in his industry is marketing, and nobody in the industry talks about it and how they have to position themselves to compete against all these other people. And so we wrote a press release like that, sort of took the David and Goliath approach, and it did extremely well. It got picked up in all of the trade publications, and there were 3 or 4 that we had never even heard of before, but they all found that this was a subject that their subscriber base was really interested in. And 2 of the trade publications started marketing columns shortly after that. But we continued to do marketing press releases for 6 months, and they continued to get picked up. Not as much as that first one did, where all of them picked it up, but I would say we probably got another 20 publications over the next 4 or 5 months just talking about that blind spot again and again. And eventually that blind spot won't be a blind spot and you won't be able to take advantage of it. But while you can be that person who brought that to prominence and to the discussion. And, it's great when it works out. I think I mentioned to you that sometimes it doesn't. So we had a cybersecurity client who said, oh, there's so many vulnerabilities on almost every website, Amazon, any site that takes a credit card, and SSL is great, but it doesn't do X, Y, and Z. So we did a press release on it, and several people in this community reached out to him and said, we all know this. Quit talking about it. There's nothing we
don't
there's no
tell all the
solution
crazy
for it.
consumers out there. They'll even be more nuts, right?
Right, exactly. But there's also ways in which you can use data that already exists, so you don't have to do a survey. But sometimes people will troll lots of content and get numbers and statistics, and they just compile it in a new and refreshing way. And that's another approach that you can do. There's newsjacking, where you take a topic that's real timely right now and you try to add your opinion to it. And that's the one I see people do terrible at, because a lot of times they'll just join the conversation and they're not adding anything to it. In the same way that I feel being contrarian works very well, if you're going to join the conversation about something, elevate it. Focus it towards a particular niche or topic that nobody's currently addressing. Broaden it, narrow it, whatever it may be. But try to elevate the conversation rather than just say "me too"
Right.
and including your comment, because there are ways of taking something that's very nuanced and building a new path to that story. It seemed that when there was a Target credit card breach many years ago, everybody that was in the consulting space for online security and e-commerce was doing a press release, and they continued to do press releases for like 4 or 5 months on it. And I don't think any did much as far as success. But if you did a press release where you are a security consultant and you could say, hey, what happened to Target could happen to any small business, especially if you have a credit card terminal sitting on your counter right now. And all of a sudden you tailor your conversation for small businesses and small retailers that are sitting there with a credit card terminal saying, oh, I'm not Target, so I have nothing to worry about. And you're like, you may be vulnerable, and this is why, and provide some real solid tips and resources for them in the press release. You've just taken the conversation, tailored it to a very specific audience, and you've added a lot more information and resources that would be applicable to that audience. And that's a way where newsjacking can work extremely well.
So the whole time you're talking, Mickie, I'm sitting here racking my brain for like what are some examples that really are consumer facing that designers could do. And so I've come up with a couple. Let me see let me try this one on you. So for example, one of the things that's typical in our industry is for the construction process. Well, I mean, I don't know if you've ever done a renovation or a remodel or built a new home, but I mean, it's kind of like a joke. It's like it's I would say without a survey, I would say 9 out of 10 consumers would not hire their construction company again a second time, their GC a second time, right? It's just it's such a stereotype that and I know in my own business in Window Works, when I have met a client who has used a particular GC and they have said they would use them again, that is the unicorn of all clients. Like everyone's like, I wouldn't use them again. This one didn't show up. And that one, because number one, it goes so long. Number two, their expectations are usually unreasonable. And number three, there are a lot of, small construction companies, solo-ish type of firms that really are horrible with communication. So it's like a cluster thing waiting to happen, right? So
Right.
what if it was like somebody did a survey on, basically, I don't know what the details would be, but your opinion of your GC after your last renovation. Like, what are the things? Did he this? Did she that? Did he this? Did that? Whatever the questions are. And then maybe when I craft my press release, I include the results, but I include what my opinion as an expert is on how to mitigate this, how the consumer can go into it with better open eyes so she doesn't or he doesn't end up getting what is the word, snowballed or whatever by a GC that's unscrupulous. Maybe it's ideas for the GC on how to do a better job. Is this where we're talking here? Is this the type of
Yes.
expertise we're trying to set up?
Yes, absolutely. That's a great example.
Okay, because that's a really painful example, and I'm telling you right now, there's 1,000 designers in the audience that could probably do a survey on this, like literally could create a survey on this. Okay, so now we have a viable idea, and the question is, if I'm Sally Smith and I've got, say I have 200 consumers on my email list. Now, there's going to be some big firms out there that have more than that, but there's going to be a lot of firms that are listening to us, Mickie, that maybe have 30 people on their email list. So is 200 enough of a sampling? Do I have to disclose to the New York Post that I send this to that 62%, it only is up 200 people, but it's still 62% say they would never hire their GC again? Like where's our criteria for that?
I would say always strive for more rather than less. But that being said, I've seen a lot of really niche surveys come with results as little as 200. I think if you're just sampling consumers in general, I would feel more comfortable having 600 or more. So I would look at what are ways in which you could potentially get more consumers to, complete the survey. It might be sharing it with colleagues and say, hey, could you get this out to your customers and your clients? I'm just looking for some more results in the survey before it goes to press. There's always ways in which you can sort of take something and try to get some more mileage out of it. It might be, if you have leads list, you might encourage them to share it. If you, the more you ask, the more potential there is that people will share the link and get it out there. I've had good success with trade associations, but those tend to be industry specific. If you're looking for end consumers, is there a group that the consumers might be members of, and of which that membership might be willing to, send it out to their survey, to their members to see what kind of results that can be received through something like that. It's just a matter of figuring out
Where
what's
they
the
are.
audience you're looking for, and what kind of communities are they naturally in that you could align yourself with.
Now, are we able to be like, sort of really scrappy about this? And I surveyed the 65 people in my PTA group at my kid's school, and I put that 65 in. I put my 20 clients that I've got on an email list. Maybe I have 500 followers on Instagram. Can I put a survey in Instagram and call that an official response? I mean, are we able to cobble it together and ultimately come up with 600 people, even though we might have done it informally and all of these things that are easily accessible to us?
Yeah, that's completely fine.
Oh.
I mean, at the end of the day, this, if it was a medical study or something like that, you would want to be more rigorous. But for the average media, a sampling across several different modes, social media combined with email and other things, is completely legitimate.
Yeah, I mean, I think even, no matter, literally, if I've got 20 emails from my client base, and I've got 500 followers on Instagram and maybe 200 on Facebook, and I've got, an organization that I belong to, I can cobble together 600 people, I think, right? Okay. All right. So I always have to, like, look, we've got firms listening that have an email list of 10,000 people, but, we got to make it work for all of us. So, all right. So now moving on, we've got a couple of ideas on what we might survey. We've got an idea on how we might gather this information. Then we can either research all the press outlets ourselves, or we can use your service to send it out. But the goal of doing this, like for me, it's a lot. We have to always remember, we have to say, why are we doing this? So I want to clarify with you. Just based on my own experience in business, if I were putting this into action for WindowWorks, I don't know that I would be like, hey, I'm going to get this article picked up on, the most amazing awnings for restaurants right now because of COVID, and it made it such a hot topic, because I necessarily think I'm going to get a client, but maybe I'm thinking, is my goal just to be able to put on my website, as quoted in XYZ New York Post about, restaurant boutique awning solutions for, restaurants or whatever. And now when maybe somebody finds out about WindowWorks and they come and they're like, oh, they were quoted in the New York Times. Like, is that my goal, or is my goal, like, that's crazy, LuAnn, your goal really is, let's get a customer to call you?
I think the goal should be all of the above. I think that I have clients who, it depends on their industry and who their end users are as to how PR works for them. Sometimes it's getting a sampling of industry trade publications, even though that's not their consumer base, because it does add a lot of credibility to them, and having those as featured on sections on your website really conveys a lot of expertise, and it's like an implied endorsement that these publications wrote about you. And you do want to include those logos. You do want to include those clips on your website. It makes it easier for when you are converting a sale. If someone is looking at two different people and they see that you're aligned with several industry trade publications or have been featured on it, they're probably going to lean more towards you than the other guy if the pricing is the same. That being said, I think it's really great when you do get media coverage where the reader is your potential customer, because it is the easiest customers to convert are those who read an article, get a warm feeling about it, click through to your website, and then just start a conversation or, buy something, because, that's happens naturally. And I think that, all of these should be goals, and you should be maximizing your opportunities so that if you get media coverage that is not, the audience isn't your customer base, how can you use that to strategically help you? And getting those ads featured on logos, adding them to your news clippings on your website are first great steps. Share your successes with your social media, your leads, your clients, and also try to work towards getting those media mentions that do bring you customers and leads.
Okay. So I like that. And you know what? You're 100% right. It's like if the results of whatever survey I come up with in my mind are of interest to my industry people, whether it be my local IDS chapter or the national IDS or the ASID or WCAA or, whoever it is, right? It's cool if they want to pick it up too. And then you just have those logos there. That's adding to the credibility. It's like what you came to me and said, increase your visibility and your credibility using press releases. It's for somebody that finds you and they're on the fence. It sort of adds to, this person is respected in and out of the industry, yada, yada.
Right.
Very good. Okay. All right. Is there anything... Now, I mean, for me, I feel like this is a lot of deep work to do, right? It's a lot.
Right.
This is not something, hey, I'm walking down the block and I've got an idea. It's even like the idea I came up with construction projects that go wrong, right? Or just the process, whatever that would be. It takes a lot. Now it's an idea, but we got to sit and we really got to think of the questions, and then we got to, like you said, we have to elevate it. We can't just like, here's the results. We have to have an opinion on the results, and then we have to be prepared that when somebody comes to our website, that it isn't the only time we've ever had a conversation about construction projects. Like we have to this is what I do. This is my area of expertise, right? But it takes more than a minute to do this. This is like kind of work in my mind that I would okay, let me time block this. I'm going to spend an hour on this every other Thursday. And it's a long tail thing. And by the way, if I have more time, then I might do it faster. But I just mean to say this is not a quick fix type thing, right?
Right. You do have to commit to it, and it is one of those things that if you are going to do it yourself, you have to sort of pick and choose what your battle's going to be as far as where you target. Because if you're just targeting, newspapers, you want to make sure that it's within the radius that you serve. And that being said, I do think local media is some of the easiest media for people to get, like interior designers looking to establish relationships. Find out who are the writers in your area that cover your industry, be it the newspapers, whether it's the major one, maybe a few regionals that you have. You can look also at business publications if you're lucky enough to have a newspaper or magazine that serves your region, and just naturally reach out to the writers. And if you don't know their email address, you can just call and ask, and they'll give it to you. Mm-hmm. Reach out to them, start a natural conversation, say, hey, I'm a local interior designer. This is the market that I serve. And as I, have, needs, I would love for you to mention me when something comes up. As a matter of fact, I just did this big art installation at X, Y, and Z, and here are some pictures, and I would love to talk to you more about it, and perhaps you'd be interested in doing a feature about me and my client. So, there's lots of different approaches as you work on different assignments, or if you see something in your industry that's trending and everybody's jumping on board, you could at least say, hey, I see right now, it's really trending in my industry. This subject when it comes to, let's say, renovations. And I would love to talk to you and share my experiences about it and my expertise and give you some great quotes. So as you have these stories or ideas, you can pitch them. You don't need a press release for that. It's just you talking in your natural language and sharing ideas and tips. And these are really easy relationships to foster. It is something that you have to stay on top of because people's beats change. So you want to make sure that you're constantly contacting the right person at these publications. But, that's the same approach that you can build out to trade publications and other places if you're willing to do the legwork. It just takes more and more time the larger you build that bubble and that network of people that you want to reach. So I always say that if you are looking for national media attention, a service that goes over the newswire and emails journalists directly like eReleases does is a really invaluable service that sort of preserves some of your time and allows you to focus on what you do best and to spend your energy perhaps just fostering local media where you would probably have a much higher success rate of getting the media interested in you. And what you'll find is if you reach out to the media 4 to 6 times a year, when they are writing about a topic and it's in your industry, they're going to think of you naturally and try to find you in their email to say, what was the name of that person? What was the name of that organization? Because they want to call you and get your perspective on it and perhaps get a quote for the article that they're writing. And it's one of the reasons that you often see the same companies again and again in local media because they've done the legwork and established those relationships. And it just makes it much easier for journalists to plug in company X, Y, and Z when there's a round hole and you're dealing with a circle that you need to put somewhere.
Yeah, all of that sounds so good. And you made me realize that, we all have our regional shelter magazines and, we're constantly pitching our projects, right? Here's this great project I did. This is a kitchen renovation. But I realized that there's an opportunity to take and pitch this sort of survey results. You know what I mean? It's like, because the editor is literally needing to do other content for the magazine, and that might be the way that you start a relationship. And I'm telling you, we all know if I pitch you because I did this survey on the consumers, feeling on their latest renovation project, whatever. If the shelter magazine thinks that it's all interesting, they're gonna go to your website, and then when they see your portfolio, they might be like, and this would be a great designer to feature in, an editorial about, bathroom renovations or something like that. So I can see that, it's a building block. And it's almost like a maze. It's like, go down this road, leave a little, I feel like it's like Hansel and Gretel, right? Like, go down this road and leave a little nut over here, and go down this road and leave a little nut over here, go down this road. And, you don't know when it all comes back to you, but it is laying the seeds all along and seeing what happens. But it is, something that requires, I think, an organized, concentrated effort. Whether we were to execute it ourselves, we certainly can, or to work with a company like yours to take advantage of the e-releases, and we put it all together and then just pay you to send it out to all the media people, right?
Right.
Okay, awesome. Makes me think, I have to say, I'm sitting here going, well, between WindowWorks and Exciting Windows, I could do 6 releases in a year. My brain is like, I'm trying to think of it for the designers. But for me, I'm already like, pa-ching, chicken, like I think of that. So thank you so much. Tell everybody how they reach you and your books, all the things, Mickie.
Sure. So my website's ereleases.com. If you look in the footer, all my social media is on the lower right. LinkedIn's a great way to reach out to me personally. There's a new customer special that's there in the footer. So if you're looking to get started, we have a la carte pricing with new customer promotion. And feel free to chat with one of the editors or call. We specialize in helping people who don't have a lot of experience with PR. It might be the first press release that they're working on. We're willing to review your press release or talk to you. No commitment. There's no salespeople or anything like that. So It's just, we're trying to provide a lot of benefit to startups and small businesses and entrepreneurs, and that's the market that we serve. I did mention that I have a strategic masterclass on PR strategies. I will make that available for free to anybody who wants it. It's available at ereleases.com/plan, PLAN, and it's less than an hour, and it's accessible to anyone, even someone who doesn't have PR experience. You're going to get rid of all of these ideas that don't work with press releases, like a new hire or a new website and things like that don't get media traction. And it'll allow you to focus on press releases that do have a really high chance of getting media success. And so I would encourage anyone to take advantage of that.
Oh, I love that idea. I mean, see, that's the thing, because what it occurs to me when you say, so it's ereleases.com/plan. This is basically, don't do this, do that. That's what, like, oh, you thought
Right.
that was a great idea, sweetie. Not a great idea. You're hiring a senior designer and welcoming him or her to your team is not newsworthy, right?
Right.
Right. Okay. I mean, I think where we get mixed up on that type of thing, Mickie, is we realize, I think what we do is we just say, if that gets picked up, that gets me some recognition. But we're forgetting who's going to pick that up. Who cares about that other than us? That's the part that we sometimes forget to ask ourselves, who cares about this, right?
Right.
Yeah. Very cool. And one more thing before I let you go. We all do time or money. You also have a service for companies that are listening that are much larger, that are ready for one-on-one and working with you. It's not just this level where most of us are, where we're going to cobble it together ourselves with some of your expertise. You do have that full-on PR services. Am I right?
That is right. It's called the Personal Publicist Program. And if you go to personalpublicist.com, it'll take you there. It is either a 6-month to 1-year commitment, depending on which program you come in on. But we would basically design the PR strategy for you and your business, what we feel would be strategically important and have a strong likelihood of getting media success for you. We would help you in building out a survey and study. If it involves reaching out to a trade association to get access to their members to complete the survey, let's say you need more respondents to come up with a great survey, we assist in that. We can help build out the questions to ask and really frame it. Those are the types of things we do under this program. It's a lot more of you having to do the work and letting us focus on that and building out the press releases, designing them, and then issuing them on a regular basis. And it's a monthly program where we do a release every month.
Love it. Love it. I love it. So something for every one of us, no matter where we are in our businesses. But the bottom line is the valid conversation about having some press releases to build our visibility and our credibility, and, whether that is ultimately to get a consumer client from the press release itself, or to put it there on our website to give that little bolster and that little differentiator when somebody's deciding between us and someone else to work with. I love it. Thank you, Mickie, so much for joining me on the show today. Appreciate it.
Oh, you're very welcome. It was a lot of fun.
All right, so pitching smartly to the press requires looking at things a little differently, right? We have to essentially reverse engineer our pitch. And thanks to Mickie, we have a couple of great ideas that we can do to increase the chances that a publication will take a closer look at us, right? So first is we have to stop thinking like a designer and start thinking like a regular person. We need to get into the mind of that consumer, that regular person who doesn't live and breathe design. Think about, what do they want to read? Think about what matters to them. What would pique their interest? What value could you offer them? And what would make them stop scrolling and read more, right? The other thing he said is to get the story picked up, being a contrarian, not always a bad thing. Saying something that doesn't go with the flow might get you noticed. Then he said we can think about compiling other people's data and coming up with something unique about the findings, right? Another idea was to do what Mickie calls newsjacking, referencing a trending topic, but apply it to a specific niche or even disagree with the generally accepted idea on that topic, all right? Another idea is to come up with our own idea and then translate these ideas into a survey. To create a digital survey, we can use SurveyMonkey or we can use Google Forms, which happens to be free. All right. These tools will allow you to type in your custom questions, and then they will provide you with a survey link so that you can then send it to your email list or your social media, right? And Mickie says when creating a survey, limit yourself to 8 or 10 questions and include one question that's a little different, something that will elicit responses that you can use as attention grabbers or that you can use to enhance your pitch with great quotes. All right. Now, if you have a big email list, you're all set. Just send out that survey request. If your email list is a little more limited, you might have to do some legwork. You can start by sending the request to your email list, no matter how big or small it is, and then make a pitch. You could also make a pitch for it on social, right, to get some more responses. And you can get your survey respondent numbers up by doing what he said, considering reaching out to organizations or groups that you belong to in the industry that might have a subscriber list. Okay, now, once the results are in, create your press release with your survey findings and your analysis of the results and pitch it to the publications. Okay, now that's important. You have to add something to it. It's not just a survey. It's what's your unique take on it. Now, on one hand, I'm stopping here and putting a little bit more emphasis because it's important that you have a take on it. But don't think the take has to be like Nobel Prize winning take. It just has to be a take, okay? And you've got one. You really do. When you sit and think about things, you'll find that you actually have an opinion on them. You really will. I know that this sounds crazy pants, but you do, all right? And so love all these ideas. Now, are you feeling a little overwhelmed by this process? I mean, this is no joke. It's going to take a good chunk of your time. I have to say that, it's really just deciding if something's important to you and putting the time aside. And Mickie has a couple of different things that he can do to help you out. First, he says, spend an hour taking his free class. Go to ereleases.com/plan. Right? So like I always say, we figure out the way. If we want to do it ourselves, we can, right? So this free class, e-releases.com/plan. It'll be in the show notes. Now, if you want to do your own survey and write your own pitch, but need help with distribution, Mickie has a la carte pricing for that at e-releases.com. And if you're looking for full service, you can go to Mickie's sister website, personalpublicist.com, to learn more. All right. And if you were wondering about HARO that we talked about, which is Help a Reporter Out, you can find out more about that at helpareporter.com. All right, helpareporter.com. Now, I want to remind you that we had Amy Fleury on the show, episodes 108 and 323, talking all about how to pitch. And she's got her 2 books. She has the Recipe for Press and Recipe for Press for Designers. Okay, Amy spent years as the editor who received these pitches. And so she really walks you through the things that the pitches and the ideas and the presentations that she loved to get and the mistakes and the things that people do that she's like, please don't do that. Okay, so I encourage you to go back and listen to those 2 episodes and also to pick up her books. All right. Now, this is a lot. So before we do anything, we want to know why we're doing it. Mickie notes that we can be doing it for prospecting and or converting, right? We may get a new client from it, or a warm lead comes to us to the website and sees that we've been featured on XYZ publication. But it also helps to build trust and just to have people, it's like that outside credibility factor, right? And so I think that it is important. Most press isn't necessarily going to result in a client. It can, it does, it happens, believe me. But mostly it's that bridge to that building trust and that credibility factor that you are looking for. And if the rest comes, yay, yay, yay. All right. So I hope this was helpful for you, and I thank Mickie for showing us another way to think about attracting press to our business, all right? And I hope that I'm going to see you in High Point. It's coming up, all right? If you are interested in joining me for the Power Talk Friday tour that I mentioned at the top of the show, which is sponsored by Revel Woods, IDS, the Interior Design Society, and My Doma Studio, please go to powertalkfriday.com, all right? And you will see the amazing lineup of guest experts that I've got with me for this particular Power Talk Friday tour. And, be prepared to have your business completely transformed. At least your mind will be blown. That I can promise you, all right? So that's powertalkfriday.com. Alrighty, thank you so much for joining me today. I really do appreciate, as I always say, that you show up and spend your time with me. Decide to be excellent. Thank you so much for joining me again today. This podcast is a production of WindowWorks, your resource for custom window treatments and awnings. To learn how we can help you on your next interior design project, go to www.windowworks-nj.com. And if you're interested in working with me on your business, either through masterminds or one-on-one coaching, or you want to know how to get my book, The Making of a Well-Designed Business, or you just want to know what's going on in the podcast land and where I'm going to be, all of that is found at LuAnnNigara.com. Thank you so much. Have an excellent day.